Hello? Is anyone out there? Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me? Is there anyone out there? That is the sound that is heard in the darkness. That is the sound of each soul crying out for the light. That is the sound that enters the realm of heaven, that cascades from the mountaintops. Is anyone out there? Can anyone hear me? Crying out from the soul of us to the soul of God. We stand afraid of the darkness. We stand afraid of the enemy of the Lord. This is true. I find it rare that anyone is ready to go toe for toe for the enemy. Although they laugh and talk about it once the circumstances pass, they didn't go toe to toe with the enemy. They didn't hear the sounds of the enemy coming after them. They didn't stand and wait to see what the enemy was about to do to them. They hid underneath the bed. They hid in the closet. They hid under a pile of clothes. They hid. They ran and they hid until the darkness was gone. Till the Lord returned back to them. But you see, this is a different generation. This generation has the power within inside them to be able to defend themselves against the enemy. It is in our bloodline to defeat the enemy. It is in our bloodline to destroy the enemy. See, it's so easy for us to get distracted by the enemy because the enemy is family. That's right, when we look at God's creation, that makes us brothers and sisters in every aspect. Which means it's a lot harder to say no to your brother than it is to your stranger that comes along. How many times have you got in trouble for your brother or your sister because of what has been going on? Because something they chose to do, but they needed your help to get out of it. They needed your help to make it okay. Big brothers, big sisters, how many times have your little brother come to you crying, wanting you to wipe away the tears, wanting you to teach them how to protect themselves and be stronger and to be just like you? See, the enemy knows this. This is why he stood and watched the crucifixion of his brother. Because he tempted him 3 times in the desert and he did not take his temptations. So he stood and watched him be executed on the cross. Took some joy in it too. He realized now I can get the people to do what I want them to do. He spearheaded, he motivated so many to turn against each other based on the words of faith. If you know your history, you know the Knights Templar, you know that those who were around at that time, Christian and Muslims, were killing each other based on the word. Even though the Torah, the first 5 books, is something that they have in common. But those Romans believed that they had the right to do something after they did what they did to Jesus. Now they say 2,000 years later, we don't hear the voice of God, and that is not true. The voice of God is in the bloodline. And Jesus took his last supper and he said, "Take this wine and drink of my blood. Take this bread and eat of my bones." He was allowing that sacrifice and telling you that it's now within the bloodline. Prophets will spring up because it's in their bloodline to spring up. Righteous men shall walk because it is in their bloodline to walk. Jesus did a lot of remodeling when he was here. Let me say it the way I love to say it. The Lamb did a lot of remodeling while he was here. It is in your bloodline to behold such gifts as the kingdom of God. To hear the voice of the Lamb speak to you. Oh, there was a lot of trickery and a lot of ways that the devil used his power. Promoting things that was not said by the Father. That was not said by the Master. That was not said by the teacher. From the beginning, he wanted them to start backsliding from the word. It's okay not to do this. It's okay not to do that. It's okay. All the while knowing that it is not okay. All the while knowing that it will destroy his people. We cannot be no longer confused. We can no longer be lost in the wilderness of the devil. We can no longer fall for the parlor tricks that the devil uses. The gambling, the drinking, the sex, the love of money, the love of materialistic things. We can no longer allow our lives to be shaped by iniquity. We cannot allow our lives to be shaped by the birth pains of the earth. We can no longer allow our lives to be shaped by the temptations of the snake. See, when he appeared to us, he appeared as a snake, the lowest crawling animal there is. and said but a whisper to gain control over the world. He believes that naive people will go along with him. He believes that he just needs a bigger army than God, and then everything will be alright, because then he'll have control of heaven and earth and Hades. But we got a message in our bloodline that says no. A message in our bloodline that says no. You're not going to win that easy. You better put them cards down, because you're not winning today. You better put the game up now, because you're not going to win today. We prosper in moments of pain and suffering, because we know the will of God will ease our pain and suffering. Yet we know that the martyrs of God is worthy to enter in the kingdom of God by procession. We know that the hungry and the thirsty shall enter the kingdom of God by procession. We know the sick and the lonely shall enter the kingdom of God by procession. So don't you worry about everybody else. Worry about you. The danger of life now is on you. What will you do to change the force of this world? What will you do to testify so that others may be able to live just a little bit longer? What will you do in the hour when it's time to begin speaking? It's in your bloodline that you should be standing upright as the trees stand upright, as the grass stands upright, as the flowers grow upright. Everything is supposed to be upright. $2,000 doesn't mean that the Lord has disappeared. He's been around the whole entire time, watching man shape the 21st century into the largest century of sin and adultery he's ever seen before. Creating such fornication, creating such temples unto yourselves and shrines and idols. It's in our bloodline. We're supposed to be ready to fight. We're supposed to be ready to take on the enemy at any point in time. But it's hard to do that when you are one foot in the grave and the other foot on earth. Where you died inside, and nobody knows it but you. Where inside you're not happy with what your choices have been. Where you're not happy with the choices that you have made. I know, because I once made the same choices. Trying to follow the path of those who are popular. But the more and more they followed the enemy, the sicker and sicker I got, I realized the bloodline doesn't take imperiality. Everything that goes to my body and my mind and my soul has to be pure. My thoughts have to be pure. Can't mess with the timeline. But today, as I said before, the choice is yours what you decide to do with the bloodline. Because it's within you. The power of heaven is inside of you and all around you. The power of life is within you and all around you. The power of love is within you and all around you. The power of peace is in the palms of your hands. The power of faith is in the palms of your hands. The power of hope is in the palms of your hands. All you gotta do is lock them together and begin praying like you've never prayed before. We need to start acting like fasting is not a way of life, or not a way of our life. Fasting is a way of our life, and we have to begin to set aside time to fast once again. This is not about whether you go to church or not go to church. Whether you sit in the temple, the mosque, the synagogue, the church, it's not a question of that. The question is, do you still hang on to the old ways? Do you still believe in the old ways? Have you understood the voice of God? Have you understand the new commandments that the Lamb has brought forth? The bloodline is royalty. The bloodline comes from the host of hosts. The bloodline comes from the kings of kings, the lords of lords. It's one of the reasons Jesus made sure and made clear at the Last Supper that this was his blood, that this was his bones. Eat and drink of it. Because there will no longer be a great one to stand in the midst of crowds and say that they have the authority of the Lord with them. But it shall be the work of a few to tend to the harvest, to check the fruit, to make sure that it's still pure, to make sure that it's still good. The devil know what he's doing. He's one of our slick brothers and sisters who have figured out a way to slime and work their way into our lives and bring drama into our lives. The devil is slick. He knows that it's harder for you to say no to him when he is just like family. Where he appears to you like a good idea. A flavor of the month. It's time to stop letting temptation tempt us out of the way of the Lord. It's time for us to grow a backbone and say no to the devil. Devil and his perverted thoughts that seem so easy to obtain in the mind. He knows because we family. that he could just enter into our minds and run a display of some things, and we get carried away and we start the drinking and start the smoking and start doing all kinds of things that we ain't got no business doing. It's time for us to learn from our mistake. Chasing behind the enemy and not praising the Lord enough. You see, our brother doesn't even want us to be in existence. He doesn't want us to be inhabited upon the world. He doesn't like us. That's for sure. He isn't close with us. He doesn't help us. He helps himself to the things which we have fought hard for. He helps himself destroy the future and the integrity of the word of man. He makes sure that the hollow holes of man remain hollow and empty instead of filled with the kings of men. He curses us instead of blessing us. He confuses us instead of enlightening us. It's time for you to see who the enemy really is. The enemy is the devil. The enemy is Satan. The enemy is the one. I call him the one. Or I call him the beast. Every time you do something wrong, all you're doing is feeding the beast. It's time that we stop feeding the beast. It's time for us to return back to what we used to do. Love our families with all our heart. Raise strong children whose ideals can change the world. Raise prophets. Raise those who can hear the Lord's voice over all things. It's time for us to drop down to our knees and begin saying, allow wisdom in, Lord. Allow grace in, Lord. Please allow me to be reintroduced to you. I am your servant. This is a time not to be humble. This is a time to be fighting for your life. The rules of engagement is in your bloodline. Your handbook of what to do is in your bloodline. It's within you, is in your DNA. The strength, the power, the fortitude is in your DNA. And before I let you go, I just want you to know that this battle has been going on for centuries and centuries. But the children of destiny will put an end to this battle over our souls, over games, over temptation. The children of destiny shall wipe the earth clean and start all over again with a new heaven and a new earth. The children of destiny shall worship the Father 24/7, praising him in and out, over and over again. The bloodline is your link to God. The bloodline is your link to hope.